Transformation happens here on Unifying Family. Men on Monday, women on Wednesday. Real talk, real issues, real solutions. Unifying Family, building strong families.
Good evening, one and all.
Good evening,
Yes,
gentlemen.
yes. Again.
Well, welcome this evening or this night time to our program. It's good to see you, Minister Sinclair, Kevin. I recognize that I wasn't able to be part of that exciting program that we had a couple of weeks ago, but I was busy celebrating. You know what? So tonight we are going to be looking at the theme for this evening is men and conflict. Do we resolve or avoid conflict? Are you guys ready?
Yes, please. Ready and roll for conflict.
All right. Well, you're right. Let me start to have some noise on the topic. Now, what I'll do first, Sinclair, is to let you look at the general. I'll start off with you, the general ways persons deal with conflict. What are some of those general ways that people would generally handle or deal with conflict?
Well, first, I want to look at the types of conflict first. I think
okay, no problem.
Because they got types of conflict because they got intrapersonal conflict. That's where people have conflict inside of their own self, conflict with their own selves. And this is one of the biggest issues, the fact that we have intrapersonal conflict. And then there's interpersonal conflict between individuals. And they got intergroup conflict, as that explains itself, and interorganizational conflict, which is a group of people. So we talk about the main things about handling conflict and diffusing conflict. How do people look at areas of handling conflict? I'm going to summarize a couple of things so we can start to go a little bit. But you have people that are either high cooperative or highly assertive. Well, sorry, you have a combination depending on how that looks as an individual or a group of people. So we can be focused on men a little bit, but I just want to have that background. So if you have a person who is highly cooperative, well, so let me go to the unhealthy ones first. Low cooperative and low assertive. They don't speak their mind. They're not willing to say what they have to say. They end up being high avoidant people. They avoid conflict. So they're not cooperative. They even get passive aggressive. They're the ones that can shut down, disconnect, disassociate. One, they don't speak their mind, and at the same time, they're not willing to cooperate. So you have those persons, they call them avoiding in conflict. Then you have people who could be, they're uncooperative, but they're highly assertive. So they're very competitive. They're always competing. They got to get their point across. So they're listening to answer. They're not listening for any other reason, or they're very competitive in how they operate. So we go to a little healthier in this space. People that are more cooperative, but are low assertive, they're more accommodating. So accommodating is not a bad thing, but at the same time, you want to have a healthier spectrum. And this is a little better than the others. So they have high cooperation, but low assertive, they can be accommodating. But then you have the creme de la creme, which is a person that is assertive, but also cooperative, and they like to collaborate. So you have that person that let me come together. They're going to speak their mind. They're willing to listen, to understand, hear other people, have a win-win situation. So they're not in the background waiting till the meeting finish or the thing finish and they talking to somebody else, or they're not answering in the relationship, but then they're going on social media and and dropping all types of languaging out in social media. But as the middle one, what is in the middle of all this, something called compromise. So compromise, collaborating, and accommodating are the three ones that are healthy. But we also touch on a little bit on the avoidant, which some people believe that men are. And I'm here to say I don't believe that. I don't believe that men avoid conflict, but we would definitely jump in on that. And the competing. Yeah, so that is kind of background. What is conflict or types of conflict, and then we have some ways of handling that. Microphone, Bishop. Microphone.
Sorry about that. No, I was just asking Kevin if he
I'm
wanted
reading
to.
your lips. I'm reading your
Yeah.
lips. I'm thinking you just called my name.
Yes, you're very good, sir. Yes, it was true. That's correct. I wanted to have some input from you, sir. We just want to welcome everyone who is online with us. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, the topic, men and conflict. Do we resolve or avoid conflict? I think Sinclair has done a very good breakdown in defining the different kinds of conflict that we can experience and even how we can try to resolve those conflicts.
Mhm.
But before we jump into all of that niceness that Sinclair just presented to us, I will tell you personally, I do not avoid conflict. And I feel like conflict is a must. It's going to happen. You have two different people, two different experiential background, two different circumstances, all of these things coming together. And if we're looking from the context of relationship, we're coming together. And in coming together, as we say in Jamaica, teeth and tongue are gonna meet. Yeah. So you're gonna have issues while transitioning, trying to find smooth out those rough edges, so to speak. And it's a way in which people relate. That's how I see conflict. Conflict is not something to run away from, but conflict is something to address and resolve.
Mhm. So what I'm here saying is that it isn't every conflict that we should, that is, what should I say, detrimental, but there are some positive aspects. But I guess a lot of times when we talk about conflict, we tend to think about the negative part, which might lead to violence, which might lead to the breaking up of marriage and so on. But I think as counselors, we admit that conflict is important, especially if you're seeking to resolve in decisions or certain decisions. But I wanted to find out from you, gentlemen, how much does, and I think you touched on it a little bit there, Kevin, just now, how much does the fact that men and women are made up differently, how much does that, I heard what Sinclair was saying about the different people, and that would be both for men and women who might be non-combative and so on, who might just want a solution and move. But how much does the differences, men and women being different emotionally and otherwise, does impact on the conflict and its resolution?
Sinclair, you're gonna jump on that one. I don't know.
Listen, I'm afraid for the conflict. I coming. Listen, what he thinks. I honestly don't think it's a male and female. Before I honestly would have looked at it as gender, but we talk personalities, and when people do describe some personalities, there's some men that might actually feel like they're women because they hear, oh, women do this, or women like to quarrel, or women. But there are some men that like a good quarrel. And the wife they're trying to figure out what's wrong with this man. He always picking at every little thing about the house, and everything seems to be a problem. He can't put, don't they say he can't put, they say he want everything put in a particular way. But as personalities, and I do believe that men and women are different. The areas that I do believe that men on the extreme cases, men when they handle conflict go in steps. Yeah. So if you see men, and that's what the reason I share with women, men apologize differently to women. So little boys apologize differently. A boy, when he's apologizing, he normally is going to drop his eyes, he's going to drop his head. That is because as a man, if we want to challenge a person, we will look them or respect the person, yes. But when we submitting to that person, or we normally drop our head a little bit, is acknowledging a person's presence. Yeah. So when you have females that teach a boy, look in my eyes. If you want to apologize, you gotta be honest, look in my face. Yeah. So now this boy, that wasn't raised by males, raised and now go into a male environment with these female understandings, body language, he can end up in conflict his whole life with males all the time. He can't understand wherever he get around, he in a noise with a man, right? But he doesn't understand the body language. But men go through steps. So men have a disagreement. We will quarrel, we will shout, curse. We may even go into fight. Then we get into other armory, to fight, and then eventually to kill. Men always go through steps. That's the reason that men could be at football or dominoes and curse out a man until somebody bring me a very big hate food, because the end of the day is we know that when we finish here, the conversation is done. But generally speaking, women don't go through those processes. Women don't go through those steps. For them to get into a high level of conflict area, normally it is when they are very agitated. So when they go into that space, it is normally, once we get that conflict, is not easily reconciled. That is why males have a tendency to have deep arguments and deep, like in parliament. A man would be in parliament and tell a man about his mother, all types of strange things. And then you see the men later having a rum, right? So these steps that men go through. Now you pair a man that understands steps and a female that understands where she would join. If she does get upset, she normally goes to the high caliber 7, 8, 9, 10. And you put that in a relationship. Because the man treasures her and he cares about her, he doesn't go to that 7, 8, 9 with her, because he cannot go into that aggression with her. He can't use the languaging with her. He can't use the physicality with her. So he's going to avoid going into that space of combativeness or competing. So many times people think that men are avoiding conflict, is that they're avoiding a 7, 8, 9, 10 conflict with a person that they love. If a man doesn't care about the female, he doesn't mind going in 7, 8, 9, 10. So because he doesn't have the skill set, one, how to communicate his emotions, feelings of where we are at different spaces out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 the top. You know what I mean? He doesn't have that skill set. One, because he was not raised, generally speaking, in a healthy environment to communicate in a conflict with a female. With a female. Because remember, mommy was prized possession. You don't ask about mommy. You don't, when mommy says go, is until you get a back slap. So you never had that environment where you could actually talk to mama and say, mama, you don't agree. So as a female that you care about, you learn that skill set from your mom to shut up. Don't ask about mommy. You know what I'm saying to you? So your wife kind of takes that same emotional space. So a lot of women think, oh, he don't talk or he don't da. But I tell women all the time, if men don't mind a woman being assertive, a man has a challenge when she's aggressive. Two different things. And many women, unfortunately, associate aggression with assertive. So when you become aggressive at a man, he does not know how to deal with this particular dilemma. How does he begin to communicate with this aggression? You know what I'm saying to you? And that is why a lot of people think that men avoid conflict, but men are always dealing with conflict. Our jobs, men excel in conflict. Look at majority of our jobs where men excel. We are always in a conflict situation. The other lie that they talk about is men don't multitask. Men are always in a multitasking environment with high conflict. And we do it, we put it on our backs, and then we go home. Unfortunately, do have unhealthy males that do not know the hand conflict and don't know how to communicate. But I was trying to help the women that are listening. It's not that men are avoiding conflict. It is that we don't like to get into aggressive situations. And especially if we don't have doors to get out of that aggression. So we're going to toss that in the pot and see what the brothers can do with it.
Yeah, and I like you said that Sinclair, as one of the things that I find as men that we do a lot of times, because we can't express ourselves with that aggression that we would express to another man, we try to find an exit. So our way of handling the conflict is leaving the house, because like you'd probably hear a man say, "Why, if I don't leave this house, I'm gonna knock this woman out, I'm gonna do something crazy, because she's just running her mouth. She's just going, on and on and on. And for me as a man, if another man is up in my face talking to me like that, then my response is going to be to want to knock him out. But that's my woman, that's my wife. I can't do that to my wife. So the best thing to do is to just leave the house, go for, do something just to escape. And sometimes when we try to escape, then we hear, oh, you don't want to talk to me, you're trying to avoid a conflict, you don't want to hear me out, and all of these things. But it's not that we don't want to, it's just that we see the bigger picture. That if we try to stay, we just might do something that is not acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I'm hearing you all saying is that the guys create some coping mechanisms to avoid carrying, going overboard in terms of seeking to resolve conflict. But how much does, as we asked the question before, how much does the fact that men are still different emotionally, I'll add some things here, men like to do things by themselves, men like to achieve, men want to be affirmed and those kind of things. And a lot of times a man can come into the relationship without having those things in his life, how he has been culturalized. He would have not been able to relate to being affirmed and so on, so that by the time the lady starts to speak her talk, it sounds more condescending than encouraging. How much of a role does that play in a man, for example, from a woman's perspective, shutting down or walking away?
Well, I can say this. I said it gets complex, so that's the reason you ask questions. Because there's some women that can speak very honestly from their perspective. They can speak their mind. They can speak honestly about their feelings and their emotions without speaking down to a person. Right? Mm-hmm. There are many persons, like women, as soon as they're talking to the man, they got the finger pointing and this gesturing at their man. They don't do it. They don't do it to their child. They don't do it to the pastor. But as soon as they come to the man, they're all like this, the head rolling and all this. It's disrespectful in every form. So the man is avoiding this behavior because you're telling me that there's a level of respect. But why is it that you have to speak to me with this connotation? Why do you have to point your finger? You don't point your finger at your child. You don't point your finger at this person. You don't point your finger at the boss. But somehow he's the pet. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you would do what I tell you to do, then everything will be perfect. No. And once again, yes, unfortunately, and it's very hard. I'm seeing that males on the age of 40, and it's very scary, honestly, what I'm seeing, that males 40 and under literally have no spines now. They literally are spineless. Right? And it's scary to watch a generation of men that cannot speak. They cannot honestly language anymore. They cannot communicate anymore. They've lost the ability to have an emotion, or what is their emotion, or what their opinion. They have been so culturalized now to not try to be a chauvinist, not trying to be, to be this aggressor of male toxicity, that they are now over in a very weak space. So they don't know how to handle conflict at all. I mean, their interpersonal conflict they can't handle. Just going to work, many men are coming home and just overwhelmed. That is it. They went to work and they come home and now they're done. so they can't even handle a woman coming at them. Why you leave your shoes at the door? Why you leave your towel at the bed? Why you do this with the children? By the time they hear that, life is already, just a job alone, they're finished. So by the time she comes with any type of things that come at him, he can't handle it. And that's a socialization that the mediums and stuff have made men feel that you're not supposed to language in any form or fashion your feelings and emotions. So I do agree that is a culturalization. On the other hand, though, women are now being encouraged to be strong and aggressive and speak your mind and language, and don't let anybody hold you down, and be independent, and a whole set of stuff. Now women are the ones that are putting up men. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and women are cheering them on. And I asked me, like, when men did it, it was a bad thing. So when did it become a good thing? All right. Oh, he home the whole day, he ain't doing nothing. Da, 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 da. I put he out, man. You know, and all of a sudden everybody's cheering, everybody's clapping. You know what I mean? Everybody, you stand long. So women are now slapping men and poking men in the face and getting aggressive with men. And because we have this ideology, and we said it, and I'm making apologies for it. This idea that men, women, I think is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. But that is me, Sinclair Andy Brown. I'm not representing Men on Monday, nor any clergy. I'm representing Sinclair Brown and his family. I do believe people should hit people. We have come to a place now where women, because we've so pushed this and they become part of Christianity, and I'm yet to find the text in the Bible that tells me this, but you know, I would stand alone on my position that men should not hit a woman, you should hold her and all this sort of weird and wonderful things. I think it's stupid. I think people should not hit people. Women have now become to a point that they become ridiculously aggressive, scratching men's cars, breaking their glasses, you know, destroying their homes. And everybody goes, you know, just walk away. And I'm telling people, this is crazy. You know what I mean? This is Men on Monday. And I say, this is my solution to men. One, you have to be honest with yourself. Number one, you have to deal with your interpersonal conflict. One. Two, it allows you to speak honestly to people. When you speak honestly to people, you first have to check yourself. Am I being condescending? Am I being facetious? Am I looking to tear down? If you could pass that test, you speak your honesty. It doesn't mean that the other person is going to like it. My wife is not going to like every time I'm going to be honest, but she has a right to be upset. She has a right to be annoyed. That is totally on her. That's not my job. Now, the job of the man is two things. One, do not run behind her. And two, do not leave. My thing with men right now is you need to stay. When she's finished having her emotions, you should be still available, physical and emotional, that she can have a conversation with you. Right? There's not the thing of escapism, and at the same time, you're trying to save the world. So you stay here as a man. You might think we should be like God, ever present, ever available. But at the same time, he is truth. You know what I mean? That's my thing. Be honest. We've lost that mandate of men being honest. No, men are so avoidant that we become liars by omission. And I'm going to throw that in the pot again. Bishop Mark, I hear anything from you at this thing. So I know you're in this pot tonight. So I need to hear from you what's going on. You got two masters tonight.
Yeah, well, yeah. I was just posing some questions to stimulate the discussion until I'm ready to drop in. I think that you've made some very good points, but I think we need to balance it too, because I know we are Men on Monday, and I like what you say about the whole thing of not being present. Whenever it comes to that going, you walk in the way because you can't control. You gotta be present. You have to be there. I say gotta say anything or fight up, but you need to be there. And I think one of the reasons why sometimes the ladies are a bit, even though we're here for the men, but the ladies are a bit perturbed, is that sometimes we can get on as men as if we make ourselves, you know, as if we know it all. So what you talk, and silence before we responded to somebody's, whether you feel it right or not, you have a right to bring your perspective. But if you say, sometimes you don't say anything, you know what I say is the lady? He feel as an idiot. He feel because he's the man of the house, everything he says is correct. You see what I'm saying? So that is where it's important that, and you mentioned a little bit about it earlier, that men seek to understand themselves, also to seek to deal with the culturalization issues that they had or lack thereof, right? Because if my experience is one where I feel, well, listen, I always right, or you see, I went through all that already, I'm going through that again, then now you find the person that you really love, you find you're treating them like the person that hurt you somewhere down the road. So I remember you started with this whole thing about issues and so on. And that is where it's important. And we always come back to this all the time that, you know, especially in marriage counseling and all these kind of things, you have to deal with these issues specifically. Because a lot of times we about the love and the sex. I have a situation where I've seen situations where guys would want to pull down their wives and tell them all about their past, and this just because a particular time they don't want to have sex with them. And because he's sex oriented, the only way he can prove love to his wife is to have some rigorous sex. Why? Because he picked up that from in the street, he picked up that with the guys, I remember going to school and fellas say to you, mommy, man, I got married. I do this in the nets with the girls. Meet the guys years later. And the guy said, Mark, you ready? Believe me? I'm 14 years old and doing with man. Barely being straight, you know? So you had a situation where you go by what the street's saying and you have never experienced it. So there needs to be a balance with that. And people have to understand, like I think Kevin was saying, understand their limits. So yes, you might have to desist, like keep quiet. But I hear you saying clear that you can't absent yourself, because then that creates greater conflict, in my view.
Just want to jump on piggyback on what you were saying. So I love the balance you brought. Yeah. Because the first time was looking from men's perspective, and
yes,
I would let Kevin jump in. The major issue I do find is that a lot of men have not evolved into man. They have not. They still have inner child issues.
Correct.
So the child in themselves, like when men say, you know, a woman don't make me feel like a man, or my wife or my woman don't make me feel like a man, and I'm confused. I'm like, what do you mean? The only way somebody can not make you feel like a person, like whatever it is if you're not that. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you don't know, if you don't know who you are, then a person then can make you feel like you're not that. And that's where a man who has to keep proving he's a man. But you can't say as a man in here, you don't treat me like a man. I think he has to over exert his authority or over exert himself to establish himself. But if a man already knows it, I think that's the major issue. I think when I'm going through counseling persons, I normally are gauging them. How much child are you? We don't know percentage wise, no. Yes, because you can be male, but you can be a man child, because I'm not being derogatory, but you're pouting and you're disconnected, you're disassociated, your sensitivity. That if you look at a child, oh, I don't feel like doing this. You know what I mean? Many men in my office, I don't feel like doing this. How do you mean you don't feel like it? I don't understand what you mean. You're a man. Don't tell me you don't feel like doing something. That don't make sense to me. That is child behavior. You know what I'm saying to you? And I'm talking about when this, as I agree with you, Bishop Mark, a lot of this inner child issue is, yes, coming from the home environment, is coming from a subculture environment, is the imagery that I'm seeing on television or whatever it is I'm hearing from the rum shop or whatever. But I did not go to understanding the original designer. You know what I mean? The person that created me, what was his definition and what was his purpose of me, right? And I say this, I wasn't raised, my father left Barbados when I was 3, right? So, and I never had any male figures in my home growing up. So raising predominantly with females in my home, and I tell people, I'm not doing men's ministry, I'm not doing marriage ministries, I'm doing these things. And where that come from, it came from the Bible. You understand? I came from the streets. I came from the ghetto areas. Nobody in the streets are married. So I was not raised in seeing nice, healthy relationships. And I also look back and see how toxic I was. So I don't champion a lot of things with champion, the single parent home and all that. I don't champion that, despite the fact that my mother did have to do what she had to do. But it made me very imbalanced going into the relationship. And if men are not willing to face their own demons, to face their own shadows, to face their own proclivities, then it becomes extremely challenging for a woman to want to communicate with him in a conflict position because he doesn't know how to. Understand? That is one of the reasons that makes men very unhealthy to have a conversation with. As this last thing, and I'm going to pass the baton on to Kevin, but even in my occupation, I tell people, like, I deal with so many types of women: white, black, tall, short, and aggressive women. Don't think that everybody in my office is nice and calm and cute, right? Some are very aggressive. And the reason is I'm not intimidated by their aggression. I listen to them, because the idea is, if you're shouting, I just want to know why you're shouting, not why you're shouting at me. I just want to know why you're shouting. Now, if I had inner child issues or I had self-esteem issues, you can't be shouting at me. Where's a big man? You go to my office. You know what I mean? The idea you're shouting, I just want to know why you're shouting. If you're cursing, I just want to know why you're cursing. Are you limited your English language? I'm not offended by you. Because I know who I am and I'm just communicating from that space. And you believe it or not, 100% of the time, women come all the way down because they're not accustomed to a man who's so centered that he's not combative with them, or he's not fleeing from them. And I'm there, and I'm talking them out of 2 or 3. Because you're not a threat to me. Why should I be in an 8, 9, 10 with you? You're not a threat. You would never be a threat. So there's no reason for me to get into a 7, 8, 9, 10 with you. And I talk out of 2, 3, or 4. You understand? And when me see that you are so centered, even if I'm upset, even if they upset me to a 9 or 10, I still talk them out of 2, 3, or 4. They know that they have me. So I could tell them, well, I find what you said just not very disrespectful. But I'm still talking about a 2, 3, 4. And they're shocked, like, I could see he's angry, but he's still communicating with me. He didn't disconnect. He didn't try to pacify me and that stuff. And that is what women are looking for a person. They don't mind us being angry. They don't mind us being upset. But can you control your own demons and still communicate from that space? The Bible has no problem with us being angry, but it says be angry and sin not. Yes, Mr. Kevin. So tell me, see you smiling.
You said a lot, and there's a lot of truth to what you've said so far. But I still struggle with the culture. The culture. One of the biggest obstacles that we as men face is overcoming the culture. The stereotype of the culture, how we have been engrafted, the behavior pattern, the example that has been set before us over the years. I saw my grandfather being a certain way, my father, my uncle, everybody, all of the man them in the house was a certain way. They don't take chat from no woman. And if a woman raises her voice, oh, she gonna get boxed down, right? No, we'll be real about this, because you know what you're saying, Sinclair, is something of a learned behavior. Yeah, it's learned behavior, and
yes, I agree. Yes, it is a learned behavior. Yes, please. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, and this behavior takes some level of self-actualization and also a deliberate act to always be examining oneself and wanting to become a better version of yourself, right? Also having role models. But the average man in the street don't have that example around him. The average man in the street is used to seeing, from he was a kid growing up, him see woman I get boxed down. So if a woman disrespect, she'll get boxed down. That's what he knows. It's hard for him to break away from what he has seen as an example for him over so many years and now take on a new self-identity, right? So one of the struggles that we're having is, one, the lack of good father figures in the home, good examples in the home. And again, you will say that, you know, you're going by your mom, but look at how you are now. You are probably one of the minority, right?
No, but they think, no, please, I want to make it clear. No, I was unhealthy because I was raised by a single parent. I mean, she did well. Don't get me wrong. She did the best that she could.
Yeah.
But I was very toxic. When I look back and see, I was okay. I was one of the persons. Here the bad habits I have. I thought I was a good guy. I honestly thought I think it was the best thing ever. But honestly, if you get an argument with me, I would leave home. I didn't answer. I would not answer you because 2 reasons. Because growing up in a home, my sister would answer my grandmother, because my grandmother was the aggressor, she was the Madea in the home. So my sister would answer, but I was celebrated for not answering. I was always told, he don't answer. It was one, but he doesn't answer. So I was the good person for not answering. And 2, I would leave home, and it was also celebrated. At least I don't be crawling, or do I don't be answered back. So by the time I left home and I go into a relationship, what do you think I did? I didn't answer, and I leave home. As far as I'm concerned, I was a good person, but I was around 2021, and this lady was married for 40 years, and that was my boss at the time, Diane Blades. And she was married 40 years, and I couldn't for the life of me understand how a person can be married 40 years. I've never seen it. It was like I saw Christ. It was what is this? What level is this? Right? How do you wake up every day and look at a person for 40 years? And one of the times I remember having a kind of where I was very upset about something, and I was talking about the conflict that I had, and I left home, and the person saying that, I don't stay and have a conversation. And she reprimanded me. She was like, Sinclair, you're wrong. I was like, how I get wrong? how I get wrong? Why you supposed to stand in the house and say something that I don't want to say, then regret it? She says, no, you have a conversation with the person. But that was my beginning. That was my beginning of learning healthy. I learned unhealthy in a single parent home. But this was not even a Christian, right? But a lot of my foundational aspects about marriage I got from there. She was a white lady. This white woman that was married 40 years, that was my boss. So yes, I agree that we need to unlearn behaviors because of where we came from. But I just correcting that yes, I did have to do a lot of intentionality, but please, not because I came from a single parent home. I was crazy.
I totally get you. But just to continue what I was saying too, when we have that kind of a struggle as men, we also have to look at how our women were raised too. And unfortunately, not pointing fingers, because the fingers still point back at the men. A lot of the homes are led by single parents, mothers. And one of the things, I've had conversations with females before who were grown by their mother, and you get this very strong personality. They're used to seeing their mom having to do everything, leading, doing everything, making everything happen. They take on that strong personality of just being in charge, boss lady, we call them. They want to make all the decisions, they want to do everything. And one of the problems that I see coming out of that are based on conversations I've had is when a man is grown, as some men, and this is just from a personal experience, when some men are grown by mothers, they're used to their moms making the decisions. And so when they're in relationships, they have the tendency at times to want the woman to make the decisions, right? That's what I've seen based on guys that I've had conversations with. And no, here comes the strong woman who was grown by her moms making all the decision, come alongside this man, and she's gonna say to him, you need to do some things. Why me always have to make the decision? Why is always me? And so for him to avoid the conflict, because he doesn't know how to not go to that 10 without becoming the abusive kind, he shuts down and leave the home. And sometimes I feel like leaving the home is for that moment, because like Sinclair said, I would leave, but for how long? Sometimes you have to take a walk, because I have heard police officers will say to people when they're in conflict, men and women, man, leave the home, leave and go breathe out, go cool out and come back, But one of the things that you said earlier is being present. And for me, being present is not just about physically being present, but mentally being present. So, and emotionally being present as well. So even though I might have to go for a walk just to cool out for a second, that doesn't mean I stop thinking about the situation. That doesn't mean the situation is not important to me. And so when I come back into the space, I should be able to say, okay, hon, let's have this conversation. I'm ready. But if I come back in the space and I'm saying, oh, just don't say nothing to me, man, leave me alone, all of these things, then that's a whole different conversation, right? So what do you say about that thing, Clay?
What about the people? What about the guys that come back home but don't want to talk no more? They still come back home, but they won't talk.
Right, because I wanted to add there what Kevin was saying, because see, one of the problems that it's missing, the thing that's missing from that is that if you just in the midst of what's happening, walk away, the cool goal, the code you had, there's a problem with that. Because when you come back, it's going to be very difficult for that person to respond to you. So what I always tell people, say it. Say what is your intention. I've had a situation where the shoe was in the other foot. The lady gets in the car, go and drive out for 2 hours, and the husband who wanted where she could go on another man, whatever, and knowing the history that was there before. So I always tell people, you say what you are doing. Listen, before this get out of hand, I think we should cool this here. I'm going to 2 Mile Hill. I'm going to park at the gas station for an hour and come back and see what happens from here. But when you just hear the thing and respond without communicating what is happening, I think that's where the problem comes. Because when you come back now with the understanding that you cool your head, but the lady or the person, it could be the other way around, the person now feels that you have rejected them. When you come back into that space, they won't hear you, whether the excuse is a good one or not. So that's why always it is important to communicate. No matter how difficult the conflict get, you say your piece. Listen, honey, before you say the wrong thing, let me go and cool my head. I get drive to the shop. You want any bread? You want butter? I go in by the gas station, put in some gas. I can come back and let me see what we can tell. Let me desist. So you speak to the situation, because a lot of times I'll say this to maybe the ladies who are listening and to some guys who get, as Sinclair started by saying earlier, a lot of us we are still kids. We still want to be pampered. We still want to be understood. As somebody raises the voice to us, we upset because we are little children in big people's bodies. But what is important is that sometimes we have to understand the way they speak to men, right? The way their tone is to men sometimes, because we have been born to be leaders and to be hunters. So sometimes the way that they approach us, whether we good or had issues before, sometimes can be detrimental to conflict resolution. Because you hear men say all the time, women will say, I don't understand, that's what you were taught about, because men don't listen. And that's a generalization and far from the truth. Because we just listen. You see, you can walk along and go along about your business, because when a man don't talk, all they want to do is fight and sex when they don't talk. And that again is a myth. That again is an exaggeration. So when a guy hears that already in her mind, she's set up that she know everything about the man. You know, I know you want to get on. So, when a man is saying again out of her own experience. So these things affect how well we get on in times of conflict. So as you said, Kevin, and also Sinclair, this is a multifaceted thing. We're going to do this in about 15 different parts and focus on one part at a time.
But the thing about it is, because conflict needs to be taught. That is the whole thing. If we think that it's going to happen through osmosis, it's not going to happen that way. So, I mean, yeah, we can do 15 parts or one part, but the whole thing is that if people are listening, is that the same thing that Kevin was going to, is that, you know, I have to be intentional. I have to be intentional, because yes, the whole old man is there ready to kick in and say, yeah, you can't roll out. That trust me, that is still there in my being. That has not disappeared. Right? You know, my wife annoys, my wife upset me, whatever. The first that comes to my mind, yeah, you can't roll out. Yeah, you can't move.
Sometimes you go sit in the car, you know, and just sit there and say, you know what, I'm just going to sit here for a second.
But I'm saying, no, it takes a second. I'm just saying, you have a time. I don't have to go in the car anymore, because, I mean, I've dealt with it to the point, it's only 2 seconds in my head, all right? But what I'm saying is that if we believe that conflict, and because we are Christian, that conflict is going to be easy, then we got another thing coming. Don't be because you saved, baptized, delivered, speaking in tongues, that there's nothing the Bible says that you're going to be good at conflict. You have to be taught. It has to be educated. There are different principles that I can remember that I learned from Bishop Mark. There are different principles that I learned from different persons. There are books that I read. In order for me to get to the place I was at, I had to learn how to deal with conflict. It had to be a learning curve. So one of the things that I learned was, even when I was first married to my wife, I remember the time we go on argument the first 2 years, and I go on, I think my car, and I drove into Britain. So, because as I said, I leave home, I go on the block. I was living in St. George, and that is a far away from St. Michael's. So I go on the car from St. George, and I go on to St. Michael's. And I call my wife on the cell phone after my head cooled down. So not Kevin, I'm not going to get in the car, no, you know, I got to drive and go somewhere. So my default mechanism was on the block. So because it's programmed in me, my head is hot. I go on with the fellas. About 11 o'clock or so, I called my wife on the cell phone. I said, yeah, babes, I want to talk to you. She says, no problem. And next thing I hear was click. I thought something was wrong. I called back. I said, well, Babes, I was just talking to you. She said, yes. I said, want to talk about what happened tonight? She said, yes. I said, what the phone cut out? Or you cut it out? She said, I cut it out. I'm not talking to you on the phone. You live somewhere. So when you get home, we'll talk. Click. And it's so I had to leave from St. Michael. I go back to St. George and talk. I think she probably regrets. I know. So she might be afraid she can't catch me. But I had to learn to stay present because yes, my default mode is to leave. However, I'm just saying to guys now, it has to be taught. So I teach men that I have women inside my office, their wives or whatever, they're going crazy. And I'm talking to them and they watch the wife go from 100 back down to 0. And they're looking at me like, immediately their hands are fisting, their face get red. And I'm still cool. You understand? And all of a sudden the woman comes down because if I reciprocate her energy, then we all got to fight. I'm saying to you. But I also agree with you, Kevin, that many women, and Bishop Mark, that many women have learned how to handle conflict in an unhealthy way. And I'm going to name a couple of them because they got so many shoulders. And I mean, they're men, but I talk about what men have to handle with, right? They got so many shoulders, as much as people know. They got so many, as soon as upset, the whole neighborhood has to hear that there's a quarrel in the house. Some people believe that some people even open their doors and shout. So the whole neighborhood has to know that this woman is quarreling with her husband. You understand? This is what some men have to deal with. There's some people that are shouters. There's some people that are criers. As soon as it starts, any type of conflict, as soon as it could be a 2-3, tears can fall. So he has nowhere to go with his conversation in any firm or forth. There's some people that like to laugh. Some people actually handle conflict by laughing. It's not good. But a McAfee, she's laughing at him. Because she's like, all right then, you feel all right. And some may know that can rub them the wrong way, but that's how she's handling conflict. Some may go into silence. I mean, there's both genders, but I just say what some of the men have to deal with. Some people just get quiet. That is it. They're nothing more, not saying anything, not responding anything. They can be quiet the rest of the night. It can be cold. And I tell people that do this that they're just as aggressive as the shouters. The silent people are just as aggressive as the shouters because that silence is aggressive, right? Because that silence is very loud, right? But what happens is that people would demonize the shouter, but make it seem like the person is quiet, like they're being nice, but that is aggressive, yeah? So they're not leaving the home, but they have left the space, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So you don't even exist in the home. Yes, there are people that are destroyers. There's some people that start to pelt both the things that they mentioned earlier, break up things in the home and stuff like that. There are many men that are going through that destroyer personality. A cousin to the silent person is the person that says, I ain't angry. I ain't vexed. But you see everything else. I ain't vexed. I ain't upset. And there was the avoiders. There's some that actually go to sleep. There are some people that they actually, once they got any conflict, there are people, I don't know if you've ever met some of those. So conflict, they go to sleep. They just go in their bedroom and they lay down. The people walk away, and it's something that pretend it never happened. There's some people that something happened, they can act like it never happened because they don't like conflict. And there's some people know that this is very unhealthy, but this happens where people actually, they don't talk, but later it plays over their mind and then they come back aggressive 2 hours later. 12 hours later, there are many men that wake up to a woman hitting them, and punching them up and stuff like that in the middle of their sleep because they have that delayed action. And this is what a lot of men are dealing with. So yes, there's no one-stop must get, but this is where therapy comes in. I do believe therapists are vital. Post-relationship, post-marital counseling is important because we come from different spaces with conflict. Yeah, and it has to do with intentionality. And I do believe that, I'm not trying to spiritualize, but it's true. I'm telling you, my journey was very much very God-centered because I didn't come from an environment that I know. So I had to use God. I had to use, if I'm representing God, how does God talk to me? How does God handle me when I'm acting like a fool? How does God handle me when I'm being disrespectful? How does God, so that was my benchmark. right? So he was, I'm serious, he was the place that mentored me. Yes, there are the books and information I learned, but I had to learn how does God operate with me, and therefore extension, how do I operate with my wife or my children or any person I conflict.
Well, gentlemen, you notice our time is fastly going. I know normally we would make a break to do Healthy Cottage ad and so on. We could probably ask our producer to do it closer to the end when we are closing. I would just at this point just drop a couple of things, and then each of you can probably then have your closing remarks relative to this. What I would say, one thing is that where conflict is concerned, understand that differences, or should I say, men and women are different. If you understand that, then you will understand or try to get an understanding of how the other person is feeling, if you're the man or if the woman, right? Then there are differences, but not better or worse. I think the major problem that we have a lot is that people say, oh, there can be this misconception that they know who a woman is and a woman know who a man is. But there are differences, but they don't necessarily have to be better or worse. If you do not judge the differences, and then one of the other things I always say is don't generalize. Don't generalize, because also remember the people are unique. Sinclair obviously is unique to me. Kevin, you're unique because of how we were brought up. Yes, how we relate to God and all of that makes us unique, so that people tend to base their present relationships on relationships in the past. So no manning and talk to me at that again. So let me tell you, I'm blocked about here. So obviously, a guy, who as might be what you call it now, not high, mid-range, conformative or something like that, can stay back because the woman being too aggressive. And the other thing is, I like what Sinclair said and what we have been advocating. Postmarital is good. Get counseling, deal with a therapist to help you to be able to deal with this. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to make you feel that you are inferior, and if you're feeling that, you do need the therapist, right? So that'd be my 3 cents. I don't know what sense you all want to put in as we bring it to a close.
I'll just add by saying there's a scripture that says, who the Lord loves, he rebukes and chastens.
Yes.
So even God himself deals with conflict, right? And we have a response to that. The scriptures, our response to that should be, we should be zealous and repent.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We should always seek to resolve conflict, and in a manner of love, right? The scripture also tells us that love is patient and love is kind, and all of these different characteristics, right? So I feel like every time I am provoked or some form of conflict develops between me and somebody else, whether it's a male or a female, I should always want to handle it from a place of love, a place of kindness, even in the difficulty of it. Because like Sinclair says, he had to learn from God, like, what's the benchmark? What is God saying? And God is saying that even in rebuke, I love you. Even in rebuke. And that's a position that we have to take. So that's my 2 cents in closing.
Yes, Minister Kevin stole my closing, so.
so all you will say ditto?
Ditto. Yes, love. And I just want to say honestly that we need to learn is not going to happen by osmosis. It takes time and it takes intentionality, and the benchmark is Christ-like. Our benchmark is always to be Christ-like. So as Kevin said, we can rebuke in love, but it takes learning. And I think mentorship is important, and I think that we can bit by bit change a culture. I do honestly believe that.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you. Hopefully we will have our full team back next week. We want to thank all of you who has joined us and who will join us as we we put this up on the various platforms. We want to thank you very much for being a part of our program. At this time, we will invite you to be back with us again, God willing, next week for Men on Monday. And we're going to ask our producer to just go. I think we have the Healthy Cottage ad. And again, we thank you for joining us this Monday and look forward to you joining us next week. God bless.
Blessings, blessings.
Transformation happens here on Unifying Family. Men on Monday, women on Wednesday. Real talk, real issues, real solutions. Unifying Family, building strong families.